Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to Salty Roots. Today I'm bringing you a much overdue tank update on both the Waterbox 190.5 behind me, as well as the Waterbox 20 cube tank over in my office. So we'll start with the bigger tank here. If you've seen my last few videos, you know I am post, I'll say air quotes, dino flagellates, Procentrum type of dino flagellates specifically. And I'm doing the air quotes because one of the many things I've learned through this second battle of dinos is I don't think you ever truly beat them or completely take them out of your system by any means. I think that you get to a place where you have beaten them back and have more beneficial microorganisms out competing them, because I think they're just always there in the background. They're lurking and they're just waiting for the environment to be perfect for them to explode, which is what happened in my case. My nutrients had bottomed out, I think was the start of everything, and then what really tipped it over the top was when I dosed the ChemiClean, wiped out all of that other beneficial microorganism population, and I think that just opened the door for the dinos to explode. Working theory, I'm not sure, but that's my best guess of why I got them this round. And so anyway, I think at this point I have done quite a few things, and you can reference my last video to see all of those things. There's lots. I mean, I did everything from lowering my light schedule to only 6 hours a day, taking the whites completely out, only running blues. I started to do a lot of water changes at first when I thought my nutrients were high, then stopped doing water changes when I realized they were bottomed out. I added some additional rock. I added some what I call bio rocks. I added tons of bacteria and phytoplankton and rotifers and just all these things that I thought would outcompete those dinos. Also started dosing silicates to try to encourage a diatime bloom to again outcompete those dinos. Cranked up my flow, added some livestock, which we'll get to that in a little bit. It was a big game changer for me in the end. But all of those things have led me to kind of this point where I'm in a really good place and the dinos seem to not be showing up. This is at least a few weeks now with really no dinos to be seen. And I referenced that last video. I really did not expect it to get the amount of views that it got. And with that, I mean, you welcome. If you post a video out there, you are opening the door and asking for all types of comments. And man, did I get them, hundreds and hundreds of comments, which was awesome. So much of it was really beneficial, kind of helpful conversations going on. It even went beyond my tank and people talking about their tank and what they did. And so it was awesome. I also got some constructive criticism, right? Which is welcome, please, by all means. Again and again, I say that I'm not an expert. There's so many things that I don't know when it comes to reefing. I've told pretty much point blank by one person, you don't know what you're doing, and I'll be the first to say in a lot of cases, you're right. I make these videos for who I consider to be more of the average reefer, because that's what I think I am. And the normal things that I go through every single day and that a lot of you probably go through, and here's some things that I did and what worked for me. And I love when you tell me what worked for you. And so that's kind of the way I do these videos. But anyway, a few people were pretty adamant in saying you're doing these things way too fast, all those things that I rattled off. I also did the Dr. Tim's method where I blacked it out, did the refresh and waste away, and then that treatment and everything. And a couple people said, you're doing these things way too fast. And they're right, don't get me wrong. That is a correct statement. I think some of them thought that I was doing these things like every single day, changing up my method. In reality, it was like over the course of 3+ months, which I know in our hobby is still not a long time. But nevertheless, I think that some people thought it was a little bit quicker than it was, but neither here nor there. A lot of great feedback, and I am trying to do things at a much slower pace now at this point, do things much more naturally. Like I had said, those nutrients are elevated. I think my nitrates are sitting right around the 30 to 40 range. My phosphates are, I believe, 0.3 to 0.4. I know that's really high. I'm not exactly sure, because one thing that I found out is when you dose the silicates, that will cause your HANA phosphate checker to give you inaccurate, really high readings. And so I switched over to this test kit, which is the Red Sea test kit. And it was giving me right around, say, 3 or 4. The HANA was saying about 0.6 and sometimes even higher. The Red Sea was much closer to like 0.3, 0.4, which again is still really high, but probably closer to what is actually in the tank. So those numbers are high, but I'm taking the advice of a lot of other people. I'm not gonna run the RoWophos, I'm not gonna run GFO. I'm gonna just keep doing weekly water changes to try to bring that down much more naturally to help the system find its balance without dosing a bunch of chemicals. I am trying to build up that beneficial bacteria. I've heard recently tons of good podcasts and videos from fellow reefers. A couple I definitely want you to check out. It's called Beyond the Reef. It's done by Adam Sutherland, and it's really great content. One of the episodes here recently, he had Alan Vo on. Alan is a Princeton grad. His dad is a legendary reefer. He's a legendary reefer. And they just have some really good conversation. He's a really intelligent guy, and he just goes on and on about the importance of a diverse population of beneficial bacteria in the tank. And he talks a lot about how he hopes there's more studies on the microorganisms when it comes to the beneficial bacteria. There's some companies out there now that will take samples of your water and try to give you an idea of what that population looks like. We're early days, as I understand it, on that. But hopefully that'll be a game changer for us and just unlock even more information on our tanks and our systems. So I'll link that episode down in the comments. If you haven't, already listened to that, definitely go ahead and check that one out. There's a lot of good stuff. It's over an hour. That's just a little bit of a little snippet of what's in there, but tons and tons of good information in that episode specifically. And then one I'm sure you're familiar with, the Reef Beef podcast. If you're not following them, they're hilarious and tons of good information. It's Ben Johnson and Rich Ross on that one. And they were just saying that you really got to take your filter stocks out. If you're running filter stocks, stop. And the reason behind that is, a lot of us have probably heard this, but essentially those filter stocks are catching all of that nasty stuff in detritus, right? And fish poop. And if it just sits there and you don't change it or clean it out every single day, it's just rotting away and adding more nutrients back. And so what they say to do is take those socks out, which I did. And you would think then, well, where's that going to go? It's still just going to sit in the system. But they're saying in that podcast, no, because your skimmer will just suck that up a lot faster. And so I'll link that specific episode of their podcast in the comments below. Is a really good one. So between all of you giving me the comments, those different podcasts, I put a lot of things into practice that is kind of leading me to my overall takeaway from this last battle with dinos is move slow, do things as natural as possible, and really build up that beneficial bacteria. Do not wipe it out with things like ChemiClean if at all possible. Dose additional bacteria, different types of bacteria. Do your water changes. Yes, water changes will take out nitrates and phosphates, but there's lots of other beneficial things that a water change is going to still introduce into your tank that you actually want when you're battling things like dinos, because it's all about finding that balance again. So anyway, that's where we are. That's the battle. I would love to say that we are in a really good place here going forward, and it's going to stay this nice, clean, white sand bed. One of the things I haven't mentioned yet, some of the livestock that I added to battle these dinoflagellates as well. So I added some sand sifting conchs, which do a good job. They're just relatively slow, but the diamond goby, sand sifting diamond goby, has been a game changer for me. I wish I would have added him earlier on. Now, I'm not really sure about the toxicity of some of the dinos and the effect it would have on the goby sucking up some of that sand. So really, I'm not sure. Mine's been completely fine. It was towards the tail end of the dino fight. But anyway, if you look at some of these clips here, you'll see patches of dino and probably some diatoms from that silicate dosing that would probably still be showing up if it wasn't for this workhorse going back and forth, corner to corner, constantly sifting up that sand bed to where even if they are kind of there, it just can't settle because he's doing such a great job. I'll say at first, for the first couple of weeks when I put him in, there was a bit of, the tank got a little bit cloudy because he was constantly spitting out the sand. Now, I haven't done anything different or changed anything, but for some strange reason, the cloudiness has kind of gone away. So I don't really know why. He keeps sifting the sand at the same rate, but it seems to not be as cloudy. But like I said, I wish I would have put him in forever ago because I think he's one of the main reasons the sand bed stays as clean as it does. If you do get one, make sure you keep a lid on the tank. He's already tried to jump out a couple of times. They're known jumpers, but I definitely would recommend getting one of those. The other update to the tank is, yes, the dinos have really kind of been knocked back, but other algae is starting to take hold, which is okay. I'd rather have other algae than dinos, but the hair algae specifically is getting a little out of control, which makes sense, right, with the high phosphates. And so I'm doing my best, like I keep saying, to do the water changes. And then when I do a water change, or right before I do the water change, I'm going and manually removing as much of the hair algae as I can by hand, and then siphoning out any of the floating algae and things like that. So again, keeping it as natural as possible. It was strange. At first I saw like this white, like fuzzy algae all over the tank. And what I believe that ended up being was just the normal hair algae, but that sand sifting goby was spitting the sand out and it was getting caught in that algae. And so giving it a white look, which is really bizarre at first, but I think that's all it was. So I do my best, take a toothbrush, scrape that off, pull off the hair algae by hand, do the water change, and that seems to be helping quite a bit. there's still a decent amount in here. I would love to bring you this perfect shining tank with no issues, but like I keep saying, that's not the point of this channel. I'm a very average reefer. I do not have the immaculate wall-to-wall SPS tank. I would love to one day. Don't know if I'll ever get there, but just bringing you along with some of the normal everyday things that we battle as what I would say average hobbyists that do this for fun, right? And so that's an update on this tank, where we are today. As I had said, it's been a few weeks. I'm pretty confident we've really knocked those back. So let's take a look at some of the coral fish specifically, and then go down underneath the tank, show you a couple things there as well, and then we'll move over to the Waterbox 20 cube tank. All right, so we will start with the coral, and a lot of the coral is doing really well. A lot of it definitely showed signs of stress as I was doing some of those changes. It did not like the change in stability of all of those things I was doing. I did lose a torch that was right here. It completely died. And then a few of the corals definitely showed signs of stress, that's for sure. I lost almost all the color on that Garf Bonsai. The color is coming back on it now. I really started to lose color on this big Xylophora here. Underneath you can see it's really white, and that white was starting to overtake. The polyps are still there, but again, losing that purple color, and the purple is definitely starting to come back now. This coral is actually growing quite a bit. I'm not sure what it is, but it is some type of acro, and that green has really started to pop, and it started to branch out to the left and right, so really happy with the growth on that one. This digitata, same thing, it was really white for a while, and it was over on a different rock, but I brought it over here just to kind of diversify some of the color there and bring some red over here, and it's really started to get its polyps and color back and start to grow, so happy with that. In its place is this big acro I got from Top Shelf Aquatics on that last trip to Orlando, if you saw that in my last short. So it's doing okay, obviously still settling in. Hopefully we'll start to see some color on that. The anemone, it split multiple times during that dino battle, which was strange. I mean, it's not strange for it to split when it's stressed. I've seen anemones split, obviously, tons of times, but usually they just split once. Over time, they'll split again. I came out one night, and seemingly overnight, this had split twice. And so I took those 2 additional anemones out, put them into the cube tank, which you'll see in a little bit is pretty much turned into an anemone tank at this point. Down here, this hairy mushroom continues just to get absolutely massive, and unfortunately, we're seeing some coral warfare over here. The Rickordia is dying back. It is really, I think, about to take that out. I can try moving it. It's encrusted pretty good onto that rock. I will need to try to at least move that. Look at that perfect little shot there with the flow moving it back, and you can see it just killing off that Rickordia, which, ignorance on my part, I didn't know mushrooms would attack each other, but that gigantic hairy mushroom's really seemingly taking that out. Devil's Hand, Easy Softy, doing well. The Bower Banky is growing for sure, nice and fluffy, it's doing well. This Lemon Lime acro is starting to get some growth, kind of the pale tips you see there is growth, so happy with that. Acan down below doing well. A little shriveled up right now, but it gets fluffier for sure. And then the Blasto there, really haven't seen any growth on that in quite some time, just kind of hangs out there steady, but still has its color. You can really see the hair algae in some of these shots on these rocks. Moving up top, my Bill Murray is starting to get a lot of its colors back, and it continues to shoot off growth there to the left. The Monty Cap in the back, you can see the white around the edges. It's starting to encrust more and more, really color up as well. This Bird's Nest, supposed to be one of the easier corals, is really starting to get white underneath and die off, so hopefully without touching it and just keeping things, slow and steady, it will, bringing things back into stability, hopefully it'll come back. But I was pretty surprised on a lot of the death on this easy coral. Speaking of, over here, I also had a pretty big green Slimer where the red Monty is now, and I pretty much lost all of that, just like the Bird's Nest, supposed to be one of the easiest corals, and that was one of the first to go with some of the swings and parameters. I got a tiny little piece there in the back behind that Space Invader frag that seems to have held on, and so hopefully we'll be able to, regrow that green Slimer, kind of a classic coral to have in your tank. So let's see, over here, the Pink Infusion, I believe it is. This continues to grow really, really fast. Some of the other Zoas are trying to hang on, but that one is really overtaking that rock quickly. I keep the Pandora, as I've said before, over here by itself because it's not the nicest looking coral, but it's growing quickly and overtaking that little rock. Space Invader doing really well. It continues to grow. Rose Goniopora, stretched out and doing well. This little frag here, very, very slow grower, but doing okay. And then we have the Yellow Submarine and the Candy Corn Favia, both growing across that rock. The hair algae is not great for these two corals, so I try to continue to pull that back or brush that off and let them grow out. And then this Chalice down here, extremely slow grower. Really haven't seen much, since I've put that into the tank. So that is all of the coral. Everything else seems to be doing okay. I'm happy with where we are. I could have lost a lot more, that's for sure. The fish are doing great, fat and healthy and happy as ever. Haven't had any losses there. So the yellow chorus wrasse there, if you've watched some of my other videos, you'll have seen that I definitely saw some red flatworms for a bit, but he just all day long goes around and picks at those. And ever since I put him in here, I really have not seen many of them at all. One will pop up from time to time, but I was starting to see quite a few. Put him in, took him pretty much out very, very quickly. So he has a job and he does well at it. And then, like I said, the Diamond Goby, just absolute workhorse and really keeps this sand bed looking the way that it is. I had mentioned I have a few spots you can see right here. He'll take care of that probably this evening. And then it'll be white like all these other spots in short order because that's just what he does. When you really step back and look at it, those brown spots are not bad at all, especially if you saw how bad it was at the kind of height of my dino battle. It was terrible. So to see it this white is just a very, very welcome sight. Another really good sign that things are healthy again in the tank is the coralline algae on the back wall there has just exploded here recently and is almost completely covering the back wall. So again, it's just a really good sign when you start to see more and more of that coralline, and really happy with the amount of growth that I'm seeing here as of late in this system. So we're in a good place. I'm really, really happy with the tank. I'm happy to bring you this update with positive news, that's for sure. Underneath, I'll show you, there's not a ton to see. As I said, I did take out my filter socks and I'm letting my skimmer collect that hopefully and not just have the stuff sit in the socks down below. I mentioned, I do run this UV sterilizer. It's an aqua ultraviolet 25 watt, which is an okay size for this tank. It's certainly not oversized. And that was a lot of the advice I got with the dino battles. You want to get an oversized UV. And I forgot to mention on those videos that I even have a UV. And so tons and tons of comments saying you need a UV. It's like, well, I have one, but it's not oversized. And it also pulls the water out of this chamber and then puts it back into the return chamber from the sump to the sump, which is not really recommended, especially for dinos. You want to pull it right out of the display and back into the display. But I do have that UV. I am running the dose system now and dosing alkalinity, as the water changes are no longer keeping up with my alkalinity. And now I need to start dosing calcium as the water changes are also not keeping up with the calcium. So I'm going to add some calcium into this dosing container over here very, very soon. So socks are gone, have the skimmer going, have the UV sterilizer there. Middle chamber here. This was the reactor I was going to use for GFO and then Rolofos, but from all of the great comments I got, I'm going to not run any of that. I'm actually just going to leave that empty there. I have some more rock down here to grow that beneficial bacteria. And then I also have some of these bio blocks down here with the thought of increasing that beneficial bacteria population as well. But I got tons of comments saying those things will leach iron. And so if you run if you send an ICP, you're almost certainly going to see iron because of those. So I'll probably take those out as well. I did actually get an ICP, ATI ACP, so I plan on doing that real soon. I'm excited to show you guys what those results will look like. To be honest with you, believe it or not, I've been in the hobby, I don't know, close to 7-8 years. I've never actually done an ICP. And so this will be my first time. I'm really excited to see what those results are. So I guess we'll see if there's any iron showing up in those results. But And something that I do want to add to the sump here is some macroalgae in the middle chamber, probably some chaeto, and to do that I need a decent macroalgae light, and it's just not really in the budget right now, but eventually I'll grab one of those and either replace this rock or move the rock to the side. Like I said, put some chaeto in there. That's just one more way to bring down that nitrate and phosphate naturally. But you know, that's it. I know I've said this a few times on this channel. It's a very simple sump. I don't have a ton of filtration down here. Over here in the last chamber, I'm, believe it or not, manually adding auto top off because over here on this side, it's a bit of a mess, but the auto top off tank that comes with this system was humongous, and it's also does not have a lid on it. And so a couple things there. I was getting just a ton of evaporation and having to fill that up almost every day anyway. And then also I think it was just, I don't know, I didn't have a ton of space over here for all these electronics. It's hard to get to the trident. I think some moisture was kind of coming from that tank and getting down and corroding some of the wires. Check out my Radeon kind of light fix video if you don't know what I'm referring to there. There was some corrosion on some of these connection points down here. I don't know if that was the case or not, but anyway, I removed that. I really need to get the space saver. I said it like 100 times on these videos. I really need to get the space saver auto top off container to put over here, but hopefully we'll get that sometime soon. But that's what's going on underneath. And something else kind of cool that I did to this tank was I added a pretty cheap tablet over here on the side. You can find these on Amazon. I'll link this one in the comments for, you know, 50 bucks in there. I think this one was $45 or $50. But I just have it over there for anytime I'm filming or don't have my phone handy. And I just have my Apex Fusion app loaded up on that, ready to go. It's pretty cool. I'm actually going to cut this one here. This video is already way longer than I thought it was going to be. So I'll provide an update on the Waterbox 20 desktop tank in the next video. Make sure you hit the bell notification so you know when that one comes out. If you have not already subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. I'm getting closer and closer to that 1,000 subscriber mark, which based on all of the comments and interactions here lately, to me more subscribers just means more reefers are coming together to help each other out, which is great. So keep that up. I appreciate all the support, and we'll see you in the next one.